Hey guys, welcome back to the BBR podcast. I am honored to invite one of my friends, Jaime Palmucci from Michigan. How are you, Jaime?
I am great, Dave. I'm great. How's it going?
Things are good. You know, we met in Denver before you moved. You were in the process of keeping busy there as you're keeping busy in Denver. You were selling a home. You were juggling uh, a few jobs, which is pretty typical for the achiever. But
Yeah, definitely a few jobs selling. I sold a couple of homes, I think the year I met you. Um, Went through a lot of life changes and kind of like midway through last year realized, hey, this isn't the life I wanted. What can we do to fix that? And so like all intelligent people, I said, let's leave this place that everybody seems to be flocking to and go to Michigan. So that is where I'm at. Yeah, I'm just south of Ann Arbor. For the longest time, my dating app profile stated that I was an ex-homeowner. It was one of those things because everybody always like tries to advertise that they're a homeowner, and I wanted to like go against that grain, but I screwed that up, like completely fucked it up, and bought a house again. So that's not dating profile app worthy anymore, but that's where we are at this point.
you could say amateur
Oh,
commercial painter, because
I
that's
am.
all I see you do on Instagram
Oh
stories.
my God. So first off, I buying an old house is a disaster. Like, do it if you like some kind of inherent torture, but everything is trim. I have like heavy molding on every door frame, every floorboard, every piece of this house is covered in trim that needs to be painted. And honestly, like moving closer to my parents has been I don't think 18-year-old Jaime ever would have said this, but it's like been a dream. Because this morning they like show up at my house super early and we're like ready to go paint my living room. And then looked at me and they're like, you're on your own for the trim. We're literally never coming back to do trim again. This is horrible. It's just the worst.
So besides a full-time job painting your house, what are you doing for work up in Michigan?
So for money, I bartend. For love, I teach indoor cycling classes at this studio called Society. And I coach at a gym called Blue Lion Fitness. So a lot of really active related activities are where I've fallen into. I do marketing freelance, and that's always been something that's on the back burner. But my love is more on the fitness side.
Sure. Is it a marketing for fitness professionals, or do you do a lot of industries?
The marketing is predominantly like it's contract work, but mostly B2C. So it's not a lot of development for other professionals. It is, selling products, smaller little bits and bits and pieces for client base.
hmm And when we met because of a mutual appreciation for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
And
that is how I was like, I think I like slid into your DMs, like
no, it was
actually.
the other way around. I slid into
Oh,
yours.
okay. Okay. All right, that's fair then too. Yeah, so my before I left Denver, I was working as a director of operations for a regional fight league out there. And we have a few mutual friends who definitely kind of helped build up that base of trust for the sliding into the DMs to be appropriate and fun.
Right, because Instagram is how we connected. And I remember running my gym, and my intern, Fernando Paulette, is a black belt here in town, and he knew who you were already.
Wait,
And,
what? Wait, no, you never told me that.
he and I are sitting in the office, and I'm like, hey, look who just slid into my DMs. And he's like, oh, yeah, because Fernando used to work at Easton Centennial, and then he
Sure,
knew Peter. And Peter
sure.
Straub, I see regularly now that I'm a student at Easton,
Yeah,
Denver. Um, so you were in MMA fight promotion, but you're also doing other things, bartending and selling your house, and
always. Yes.
always. And the reason why I bring you back to the podcast, and you're like the perfect interview guest for me, is because while we were talking by Instagram that first day, we were talking about the Enneagram and a mutual
Yeah,
appreciation for it.
yeah. So I this is one of those like intimate podcast moments. the therapist that I went to actively in Denver, because as I had said, I had a lot of life changes that had happened, and we can touch on that later, but was a firm believer in the Enneagram, and that having that inherent knowledge of who you are and what your strengths and weaknesses are will help make you a better version of yourself. So I was really lucky to be introduced to the Enneagram in a pretty in-depth way. And I took tests, I did all of that, but he looked at me, he's like, I already know you're a 3. He's like, so we're just going to figure out what that wing is and go for it. And I am a 3 with a 2 wing. So that's
Sure.
my boat. Yes.
Yep. You're very similar to other guests that we have. It's nicknamed the Charmer,
Yeah.
and it's not hard for you to do that.
Be charming. I mean, that's my bread and butter. I mean, that has to be my bread and butter.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, no, that is definitely, and it's always been. Enneagram is one too, where as you change in your life, not only with age but with other factors, that you can have a little bit of fluidity in where you place within those structures. But oftentimes, if you are someone who's in a rigid format, or you'll have certain things ingrained in you as a child, it just continues to build, and that's what that was for me. I was born a 3, and I'm always going to be a 3.
I see nothing else but. So what I've learned since you've moved away, we haven't talked much about the Enneagram since, but what I've learned is that the Enneagram personality type is a mask that we need to learn how to remove in order to become the best version of ourselves.
So how have you, and this is, I just want to turn it on you, like, how do you feel like you've had to work to remove that mask personally?
Any number of things, like every piece of the puzzle of personal growth and development of self-awareness that I've found in the last, say, like 2.5 years since I was introduced to The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, and then the Enneagram through a workshop, um, has been necessary. So each and every bit of it, like journaling or meditation or yoga or Olympic lifting or jiu-jitsu, are all things along that path to get to removing the mask.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I actually started coaching through the Enneagram and using it to develop my teammates at the gym, developing my clients at the gym, and still continuing to do that now through the relationship coaching. But I started to see my reflections in other people. And when, say, like a challenger, when we're disintegrated, we start to go towards the investigator. Oh, well, I always need to be right when I'm not healthy. And that can really rub people the wrong way.
Yeah.
So if I want to remove the mask of the challenger personality type, I need to understand what causes me to always be right, or what situations, or why am I always researching? Why am I always investigating? Okay. And then if I'm average healthy, I can be very intense. I can be very abrasive, like a Mack truck full of marshmallows. And then when I do become integrated near the top end of the spectrum of the level of health, like you said, it's fluid. I become more like a helper and somebody who champions for the little guy and who stands up for the underdog. And that's what I do in my business. So if that's how I can remove the mask of being that Mack truck in order to get to the marshmallows, then I'll just have to dive even deeper into the podcast and into the Fit Life Champions brand, which serves the ultimate underdog.
And see, and that sounds not only like a perfect example of good self-work and self-care, but also the best way of having some deep self-awareness to make an impact not only for yourself but for others.
Amen to that.
My thing has always been being like, there's just a strong dichotomy in my lifestyle where it's you're either on or off. And on is that, that center of attention and that, super engaging, charming personality that you can modify to seem real and to see, and not saying it's fake, it's genuine, but it's so inflated, and it's finding a way to back down from the inflation. And the upside is a lot of my job, actually, for being honest, all of my jobs right now feed into that heightened personality, that big show. um I joke, and I updated my Instagram bio recently, but I'm like a professional emotional support human. I'm like a therapy dog, but with tits is the joke that I've made at the bar, which is not an appropriate one, but you can edit that out if you want. But that is
I'm fucking leaving that in because that was solid gold.
it's true though. So between the gym, between the cycling studio, and between my time at the bar, it is, people have that comfort in giving you their problems and letting you either distract them from them, which is a lot of what it is. It's pure diversion tactics, or take them in, you internalize them, and how do you spit them out back at them in a way that's not only helpful but won't do harm to them at a later point. Sorry. Got it. So yeah, that's I I joke about it a lot, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's absorbing a lot of things of other people. And so you'll have that big emotion, those big feelings. And then I go home to my house that I purposely bought 20 minutes away from any of my jobs so that I could be alone. So that if I want to go to a bar, I can go to a bar and not see people and not have this like expectation of being that version of Jamie. Which is still me, just an exhausting version of me that sometimes I need a fucking break from.
Yeah, it sounds like you're balls to the wall, busy, go, go, go all the time. What do you do either to prevent burnout or when you find burnout?
So I can tell that I'm getting burnt out. I mean, there's a couple of key factors. And it's something that I've noticed recently, like I see it in other people more than I used to. When I'm overly tired, when I'm overly hungry, I would love to like pretend like there's some bigger thing, but normally I'm just tired or hungry. I'm overly tired, overly hungry, or just overly externally stimulated. Just too many people, too much time without that alone recovery time. I get short, I get angry, and about silly things. I go cold really fast and I can recover quickly, but it's a challenge to get over that hurdle. So I require tons of just, days like today, which granted my parents showed up in my house at like 8:45, and then I had to have a conversation about healthcare. But outside of that, it's the time alone in a space that I've curated for myself, and separating out all of those versions to come back to a holistic self. Does that answer the question? That felt like roundabout. That felt like a roundabout answer.
No, it absolutely does. And I really appreciate it. And it leads me to the question of like, are you introverted or extroverted?
Oh, good question. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I've played the whole like maybe I'm an extroverted introvert. My ex-husband was like a true introvert, and I thoroughly enjoyed the vast majority of the time that we just spent alone, but I would have bursts where I would need to get out. And I thrive on, oh, how do I say this without sounding like an Instagram slut? Like I thrive on attention sometimes. So like, I think it's nice to like have people validate you, even if you don't require that validation to feel good about who you are as a person. And you can't get that by being an introvert. Like you can't get that sitting at home. So there's a line, I guess we can play around with like an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert. It's some kind of weird blend.
Sure. I'm so glad that you brought up that gaining attention from Instagram, because that's like a classic three. That's not extroverted at all. You're taking a risk as the achiever to put yourself out there on Instagram, because one of your part-time contract things is modeling.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you also go on modeling shoots where you're not the model too. You're like assistant. And here's the funny thing about your Instagram feed.
Mm-hmm.
is, yes, you're posting pictures about your modeling. However, when you're doing Instagram stories, you're not in front of the camera.
Oh, like never, like
Uh-uh.
never.
You're
Uh-uh.
behind the camera. You're actually like shooting your life
Mhm,
without you in it.
mhm.
And that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is where you gain some validation for like, maybe not so much the things you've bought, but the things you've created in your home, like the painting.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, when there is a photo right now of me, I took a photo of my father on a ladder painting the wall. I like to, and it's a terrible marketing phrase, but I've done a lot of work to curate my life. I pared a lot of shit back. I try not to buy things that don't matter to me. I will buy things that maybe are aesthetically pleasing. Maybe they aren't the cheapest things in the world right now. Not that this is super helpful for you, but I have these like stupid curtains that are sheer, but they have these like little fluff balls on them that I saw. And they fit perfectly in my decor, and it was like a nice impulse buy. But like that is like stylistically, I care about those things. Um, I use Instagram story. So Instagram posts are really just all bullshit, in my opinion. I mean, it's my own. Sometimes I'll have like this emotional moment with it, but mostly it's just stupid sarcasm and ass and tit photos. Like that just is what it is.
I think you're
This,
doing it to, I'm just going to take a big leap here.
yeah,
Because of your sense of humor, I think you're doing it to poke fun at the rest of Instagram.
sure, and that's part of it. I mean, I think you're giving me a little too much credit. I also, I put a lot of work into like this whole ass and tit thing. Like, let's give it a little credit, but the story is shut up, Dave. The story, Instagram stories at least, um fit more into my personality. Like that's more who I am. I don't feel like anyone needs to see, the copious amounts of photos of my breakfast where I have sarcastic comments on it on a long tail perspective. But if we're friends, or if for some ungodly reason, like someone has like followed me, and I'm air quoting really hard for everyone who gets this podcast, it's a hard air quote on the following statement. Um, that there is some semblance of a person behind this. And there's a semblance of person behind anyone. And I think the best thing that I can do is just be myself, because outside, because I think I'm pretty funny, and outside of other things, if I get the validation on the stuff I do care about, which is not just appearance based and not just, the level of exertion I put out, whether it's at the gym or in a work environment, those are the things that matter to me. So this is a good look at us like coming full circle. That is where I get my validation from. It is that the validation in who I am as a person versus the things I do or the things that I've acquired.
And that is truly the most authentic piece of the puzzle when it comes to the three.
Mhm.
And there's another piece of the puzzle that we're actually hearing in the last few seconds, and the last response to the last question is, your self-deprecating humor is one of the components of when you're at your healthiest.
Mhm. Yeah, and I've been very lucky. So I've had a lot of career moves in the past that were on paper perfect choices. They were the right salary, the right benefits, the right title, all of those things, and the wrong fit completely. I made great money. I had like I call them big girl jobs. Sitting at a desk, being on a board of directors, doing all of those things, to the point where now within the roles that I have, I've had people who I've hinted at those things in the past say, "Oh, that's interesting. I could never see you surviving in a corporate environment." And that goes back to the seeing who you are, and being realistic about who you are, instead of having to tampen it down to fit things for other people. Mid-June, I made a goal. Well, I had made a goal earlier in the year, but mid-June, I kind of posted about this goal that I had about just being my truest, most authentic self. And my authentic self is kind of a piece of shit to me. But a funny one, a one that at the end of the day, like, is always like means the best. And is probably a little more verbal about certain things than others, but that always feeds into the decisions I make. Like, is this the best choice for me, and will it do harm? Will it not do any harm to anyone else? Um, I don't ever think the best choice for me is something that's going to be shitting on someone else. But if I can make a really good choice for myself and then still have it be a no harm, it doesn't even really have to be a benefit thing. As long as it's just not doing harm, I'm game on for it.
Speaking of like outside perspective and validation from posting on Instagram, what does society tell us we should be like?
Ooh, is this a gender question or an age question or an Enneagram? Like, there's so many ways I could take this one. Where do you want me to take it?
In the context of like the relationship question that I asked you on the intake form, it was like, what do you believe holds people back in relationships? Or
What do we expect? How are we expected to act? Um, well, I mean, I think that there's certainly the cultural shift is there, but I do think there's still a core expectation that if you are in a relationship, that other person is supposed to be your whole life. That may not be really like the inherent answer you're looking for, but as someone, I had a 12 and a half year relationship that I consider a success. I mean, it didn't end successfully because it ended. But I was with someone from when I was 18 till 31. Someone who's a great person, who's living a really good life that fits him, that is different from the life that I wanted. And one of the biggest issues that we had was a lack of developed life outside of our 2-unit circle. And a 2-unit circle isn't really a circle because it's only 2 people. There's just the 2 of you, and you're completely reliant on each other for emotional, intellectual, and physical support. And that doesn't function as a human. Humans are social creatures, even introverts. Everyone is a social creature. You need people to help you and take care of you, and you need to be willing to ask for that help. And I think that getting away from the expectation of one person being your whole world changes your viewpoint on what dating's supposed to be. I mean, one of my biggest hurdles, especially getting at, after like an all adult, like all encompassing adult relationship, and then getting into dating, was some of that. I call it like runaway bride syndrome. So the movie Runaway Bride, I've talked about this actually with my sisters quite a bit. The movie Runaway Bride, Julia Roberts is like engaged 3 times, and each time she changes her, like the way she likes her eggs changes, because she's completely modifying herself. Like this, it's just like an example of how she's like modifying herself to suit the needs of her future partner, or ex-future partner, as it turns out. And I could see that trend happening. The first person I dated right out of my relationship, who is a great guy, was kind of like in some of the same social circles. Wanted someone different, and I think my initial response was the same thing I had done with my ex-husband, which is like, okay, if you want me to be different, I'll just be different. And that's unrealistic. You're not going to have a healthy relationship or a happy life if you have to modify yourself dramatically, change who you are for that relationship to work.
so that was ultimately the end of your relationship, but you still call it a successful relationship. Is that because you learned something from it?
Um, I learned a handful of things that are not podcast worthy to discuss, but I think that it was, so I didn't marry someone I didn't know. I knew what I was getting into. It wasn't the right fit. I think both he and I probably knew we maybe shouldn't have done that to start. And we both loved and still love each other. Now he is remarried. I mean, and he's happy, and that's all I want from him. And to me, that also makes it a successful relationship, because even with a separation and a divorce and all of that, at the end of the day, our core goals, we're still to be happy. We're still for the other person to be happy. And I've seen bad divorces. I'm a child of a bad divorce. And both my parents are happier now, but I do think that there was an extended period of time where they would have wished the other caught on fire. Like not not an exaggeration. I think that neither of them would have pissed on the other, like if they were on fire. Um, so being able to have, we didn't even hire lawyers for a divorce. Like we never stepped foot into a court. We were civil, we were kind. And I think kindness was and is something that I try and lean on when it comes to those like really hard experiences. Like both of us weren't pieces of shit. I think it's like what we can boil it down to when it comes to success. We weren't pieces of shit to each other or in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. An amicable divorce is going to help you heal faster, and it's going to help the two of you address whatever it is post-divorce in a healthier way too. Say like pets or children or the home that you were selling.
Yeah. The pets part was hard because he got to keep the pets, and that is also not really podcast worthy come. But it was I actually got to see my dogs recently, and I know it's one of those things too. I'm almost sort of hoping he knocks his wife up so I can get the dogs back, but I know they're taken care of. I have no concerns, and that's always been kind of, there's this general level of trust that both of us have always had for each other, and that's helpful. And it's I've been lucky enough, and maybe, depending on your outlook on it, maybe it's like gullibility or maybe it's just naivete. I just trust that for the most part, people will have my best interests at heart, or at least they don't want to hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's one thing if they do hurt me, like that, and most of the time that falls on you, especially in dating. Like if you choose to date someone that you know is going to be a bad choice, sort of on you if you get hurt. Like that's your call. You make some reckless choices and you like, I don't know, date someone who is probably living a different lifestyle than you want to be living, someone who wants someone different than who you are, and you are changing yourself to fit that. Kind of on you if you get hurt. But trusting people and expecting that someone shows up as their most authentic self, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, we tried. And parting ways with your head held high, or silently setting their house on fire in the middle of the night too. That probably works. I just don't know how well you sleep at night.
I see why you left Denver now. You set too many houses on fire.
I know, and once the arson teams like started coming after me, I just didn't feel like it was very safe.
All right, we're going to keep this podcast private to protect the innocent here.
Not very innocent, but yeah.
Not now that we've talked about it. So I'm so glad I asked you about what makes a successful relationship to you and this 12 and a half year relationship that you had. But let's go back just a little bit to the two units becoming one.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a really good analogy on a previous podcast that we did. So on YouTube, you guys can see this. But these are the two circles, me and my partner over here. And when we decide to enter into partnership, the two circles come closer and they start to overlap. And what happens in what you were describing is that you become the person that your partner expects, or you have no individuality between the two of you during the relationship.
Yeah.
Is those two circles actually become like stacked right on top of each other. There's no differentiation between the two. So where we find just that beauty in a relationship and beauty in our own authenticity and our own individuality is when those two circles aren't completely stacked, but they overlap just a little bit, and there's that little gap. You can see that little piece of light.
Like a Venn diagram.
Like a what?
Like a Venn diagram.
Yep, and that little sweet spot of the two circles where they overlap in like it's not a diamond, it's not a triangle, but you can just kind of visualize these two circles crossing over the top of each other. And that gap where they overlap is the sweet spot. But it's always best that that sweet spot is smaller than the two individual circles on the outside.
I like that.
And to take it even a step further, those are two circles and they overlap a little bit, but there's a bigger circle around the two of them. And that's the whole life that they want to create for each other. That's the circle of influence that they live within. And it might be their mission as a family. That might be their mission as a couple, or it might be something that they donate money to, or it might be this house that they're renovating. And that's the circle that surrounds the two individual circles in the center.
Yeah, and I think that people look at successful relationships sometimes when they're unhealthy relationships, when there isn't that split of development, when there isn't that big circle around it. Um, I don't know. So what, like for you, what do you consider things that fit into that sweet spot for you? I'm just like flipping it around because I want like, and also I want to know like what are things that are important for you to fit into that sweet spot?
I would believe that children fit into that sweet spot.
Okay.
Where you're both wholeheartedly all in it to create that life together. If your children are outside that sweet spot, then we got to adjust our priorities a little bit.
Yeah.
Say like a couple meets snowboarding, and that's something that they love to do together here in Colorado or even in Michigan, because you guys have little tiny mountains up there.
Oh, fuck off, Dave. I don't ski or snowboard anyways. I don't go outdoors. If it's not drinking on a patio, I'm not outdoorsy. So that's not where continue. Yes. Continue on.
I know that's most frequently how we hung out when you lived in Denver. We were on a patio, you were drinking, and I was
watching me drink. Yes.
I was, because I was taking some time off of drinking at that time.
Yeah, I know.
So
now, so that's cool. I'm glad.
Right. So if they just happen to meet at like something that they mutually love, it could be salsa dancing, it could be snowboarding, it could be tennis at the racket club, or even at the gym, like working out. If you guys go to the same gym, that's where you met, then you start working out together, totally within the sweet spot.
Sure.
Because it's a shared passion, but it's not your whole purpose. And that's why it's within the sweet spot and not part of that big circle that surrounds everything.
Okay.
So we have this podcast guest from last Friday. So this one comes out on a Monday. Last Friday's guest, she and her husband have created a business together. And it's a tremendous business. He's a counselor and she's a yoga therapist. And their mission as a couple is the circle.
Okay.
And then they each have their two individual lives in the middle of that. And I think it's just a great partnership that we talked about on Alexi's podcast last week.
That's awesome.
So how does that land with you?
Well, it lands by me being wildly single at this point in time. But I think for me, I have certain core aspects that I expect a partner of mine to fit with. And everything else is sort of up for grabs. Like one of the things that I found is, I do want kids down the road. So I had been dating someone recently who we got along really well. It was really easy and he didn't want kids. And so I've been trying to make decisions that will, at least to use that example, that will allow me people who fit into that sweet spot instead of being all encompassing or completely disparate.
Mm-hmm. I love that you say that, because I was just pondering preferences versus values.
Yeah.
We start to date with preferences. Mm-hmm. We fall in love long-term with values, shared values.
Yeah.
And if family values are very important to you, which it sounds like they are, then that's the thing that would be sought out in the first month or two. Those are the big questions that can be asked.
Yeah.
So you use the word expect.
I do. Well, and I use the terms expect and need when I probably use wish and want, or wish and want might be a little bit better. But everything is overly dramatic in my world. So
you don't say.
No, never.
So why I bring that up, why I actually poke at that, one, it's because I'm the challenger, and two, it's for that exact reason. Like, expectations are great. Learning how to manage them is a very important thing. And in this particular case, I would like to encourage people listening, and Jamie included, to seek out shared values as opposed to expect that my partner has the same value. Because if we have the expectation, then we're going to put that on the other person, like maybe project. I don't want to use that in this context. We're going to put that expectation on the other person, and it may cause some strife, and it may cause some conversations. Even when you bring up the first conversation of like, hey, do you want kids? You're already expecting either a no, a yes, or a maybe, or you're expecting it to go maybe self-fulfilling prophecy, or maybe expecting it to not go the way that you hoped.
I really want to tell this story and it's super not appropriate, but I'm going to tell it anyways because I don't really care that much. So it's fine. So the way I found out that this dude didn't want kids was because we were just about to have sex and he's like, yo, you don't have to worry about like birth control situations. I got a vasectomy. I'm already naked. We are in bed. And this is when this comes out. And so my initial response was, wait, what? And he's like, no, I had a vasectomy. I was like, wait, what? Jamie, I had a vasectomy. I was like 27. Was like, okay, there's a lot to unpack there. Drunk and we're in bed. This is not the time to unpack this. And that was how I found out about that one. But that was actually one of the first times that I realized that that was a truly important thing for me. That's a horrible way of describing a way to figure out something that's important to you, but it's still true. I had been sort of on the fence for a really long time, and yeah, don't feel like I'll be a half of a person or less of a person if I don't have kids, like if it doesn't happen. But I'd always been kind of on the fence for a long time. I didn't want kids. Then I was like waffling through and this drunken moment happened. And I was like, oh shit, no, I want kids. I at least want to be with someone who wants to consider it. And this person, it was a definite no. So it sort of changed my perspective on the situation.
Mm-hmm. And it might have had a differentiation between your intentions as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like your intention, correct me if, let me just ask you, what was your intention? Were you looking for a relationship? Were you looking for a partnership? Or were you looking for some exploration and some fun?
I don't think I was looking for anything. I think it was whatever happened, happened. I had met this specific guy at a bar, so I wasn't having super high hopes for the situation. But I believe that, I met my ex-husband when we were waiting tables together when I was 18. Like when you meet a person, the context or the scenario doesn't really imply who the person is or how important they may or may not be in your life. At Peter, who you referenced earlier, Peter is someone who I go to when I have a lot of issues, and he and I met when I worked a promo at a bar he was working at during a like drunken 5K that everyone did in their underwear in February. Like
Cupid run, the Cupid
yeah,
Only run.
yeah. I was working at promo and he was working at vinyl, and that was like how we met and became friends. And now he's this person who's very important in my life, along with other people who've been, work friends or above and beyond. You can't place the value on how you met the person, but it doesn't always help. And I would say it probably didn't help this dude's cause that much. So I don't think I had a lot of expectations in terms of what would happen, but it definitely did answer the question of if there are expectations, then these aren't going to suit either of our needs, because he's not going to be happy being with someone who wants kids if he doesn't want kids. It's not just on my end. That's a two-way street.
So very true. And so let me ask, were you all that disappointed, like because you didn't have high hopes at the beginning?
Okay, so I hate to ponder or, throw conjecture onto other people's feelings. I think he was a little more disappointed than I was. I think he had wanted more than I did, and I had that early on, and this was early on, not to throw myself under the proverbial bus, but it was pretty early on in us hanging out that this moment had happened. So I had set my sights pretty quickly on, okay, this is fun, but this isn't going anywhere. And I had ended things partially because our lifestyles didn't align very well. I'm super active. I am, taking strides to move in a different direction with my life, and the kid thing is a big thing. So the combination of all of those, I think he didn't see it so much as I don't think he saw the end game the way I did.
Hmm. Yep, I understand that. So I guess the timing is really important for us to explore in general. Like, there's no such thing as like the perfect timeline for a relationship or the perfect timeline for a conversation like, hey, do you want kids? Especially if, it's a little bit more casual.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
I think a lot of times what I've seen out of successful relationships from friends and things are people who've been able to spend a lot of time to get to know each other, to get that feel, to get those answers and questions out of the way before a relationship develops, before all of that. And that's always been one of my bigger flaws, is I'm just like, okay, cool, like let's jump in. I don't know who you are and I don't know any of your values or your interests, but let's try this. And then it always ultimately fails, or it ends with 12 and a half years of what I'm theoretically qualifying as a success.
um, I've chosen to adopt this word of the year kind of mentality for the last few years.
Mhm.
When you and I met, the word of the year was collaboration,
Mhm.
which is a good reason why, like I was active on Instagram and seeking out people through the jiu-jitsu community and through the fitness industry as well. And I'm like, yeah, we're talking about the Enneagram and Instagram DMs the first time we talk. Yeah, of course I'll have lunch with you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And we had some poke bowl and hung out in the sun on Avanti's rooftop. And here we are, like a year, probably right around a year and
Year
three
and a
months
half,
later.
year
Yeah.
and a half. Yeah.
So um, where was I? I was
What's
so
the word, what's your word of the year for this year?
Oh, that's right. Last year was collaboration. This year was foundation.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So when you talk about getting to know somebody and establishing what are your values, what are my values, really communicating very well, that builds a strong, solid foundation to move on to build a life by design for the two of you in whatever relationship definition you would like it to be.
Yeah. I think part of it too is, I don't know where you're at right now from a dating or relationship perspective. From my end, I've kind of decided to just be happy. Like it sounds so trite. Like when I know how fucking shitty I sound when I say those words. I understand how stupid they sound. But I spent so long trying so hard to make other people happy who were never going to be happy outside of their own abilities to create that joy, that if I can just make myself happy, maybe someone will come around, maybe they won't. Maybe I will have this like absolutely grand love. And I was so passionately in love with my ex-husband. It's not like I haven't felt love before. Like I know what love is. I know what it feels like to be loved. I've had all those experiences. So I haven't had as many experiences or as many times being just happy. Um, so hopefully, hopefully happy turns into, something that works with another person. But at the end of the day, all that matters is that I'm doing what I can to take care of myself. And the rest will follow.
Hmm. I can totally relate to that because I was unhappy for a really long time. I was unhappy with my business. I was unhappy with my relationships in my family, my daughter. Unhappy with um, some choices I had made. Like on paper, they all look great,
Yeah.
but my gut before I made the decisions was just like on fire. Like, Dave, it's not going to make you happy. You're chasing happiness, and when we seek out joy as a foundational principle of a year-long commitment, it's bound to find you in some way.
Hmm.
And you're not going to find joy or happiness with a relationship. You may
But
find
I was like, I feel like there's a but there.
you may find an increased happiness and joy in a relationship, because the purpose of a relationship is to become more of our authentic self. And that's where I'm at in dating. You asked me that.
Yes. Yeah. I think that that is a healthy outlook on it for sure. I mean, my outlook is, I think the only challenge that I have, and this is like going to be one of those like kind of borderline sad, uncomfortably honest things, is I do want kids, and if I want kids, I really have a short timeline to do that. I, realistically, like, I mean, I guess like I could be like 48 and have a child, but that sounds horrible. That actually sounds really terrible. I couldn't imagine pushing 50 and trying to push a baby out. But
You'll be 66 when they graduate high school, by the way.
oh god, I just vomited in my mouth. That's horrible. So and I mean, like, just for quality of life and everything, I really have like 3 to 4 years. Which means I have started recently kind of I'm like getting a little choked up about like coming to terms with the fact that like it may not happen. And I have to be okay with that. Like I'm not okay with it, but I have to accept that. Because it's a reality and you can't change reality. And I also, on the same end of the spectrum, don't want to just have a baby. Like, I don't want to just have a baby to have a baby. Like, I got pretty great genetic structure. Like, that's all awesome. But that's a weirdly vain thing, even by my super vain standards, to do. And I can't justify it. Like, I would like to have a family and build a life with a person as opposed to just popping out a mini me. There's a big difference in my world. So it's been a very daunting realization to manage of this may not happen, and you have to learn that that's okay. I don't like not getting what I want. That's part of it, really.
I'm so grateful that you shared that. And I don't do much self-disclosure on the podcast. That's not why I originally started it, but it's something that I believe brings a huge value to our community. And your story resonates with me as an entirety, as the whole. I have chosen not to have any more kids.
Mhm.
That would be my preference. However, unlike the guy that you dated, I haven't chosen to get a vasectomy because I'm open to that love that you're describing that could come along when I find joy and happiness in my own life. I'm open to creating the life by design with her.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to make the choice for the both of us before I met her.
Sure.
And there are tons of ways that you can prevent having children.
Oh my God, there's so many ways. So many ways. Birth control is very effective, kids. You should use birth control if you do not want a baby. It's very effective.
Sometimes that changes our hormones, and we need to be cautious of the brand and seek out your doctor's advice on that one.
Yeah, sure. Yes. Yeah. Condoms are good too. I mean, birth control follows many, many plates, but yes, absolutely agree.
There's temporary vasectomies for men too. There's a plastic clip that actually goes on the vas deferens that prevents it for a time being, and it's a method of birth control that can be on my shoulders and say like, okay, our family plan is not to have kids for 5 years. Okay, I'll get this temporary solution, and then in 5 years, get it removed when we're ready to have a family.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you feel like, I know you're not like big on the self-disclosure end, but like, how do you feel like the conversation has gone as you've been dating, where you've said that you don't want kids anymore? Do you feel like it's been either, is it a conversation topic that you don't really approach that often, or is it like a dramatic response that you typically get?
No, it's none of the above. Since I've been single, I think you caught me about a year, just shy of a year after my last relationship ended. And a little bit of self-disclosure. She wasn't on birth control because she said, quote unquote, it makes me crazy.
She was crazy on her own, yo.
Again, I don't disclose, and I don't throw people under the proverbial bus, especially 2 years later on December 3rd. I only remember that because December 3rd is my sister's birthday, and I'm like, what a shitty way to spend my sister's birthday.
Yes, that is also true.
Right? So I think that the differentiating factor is it's a case-by-case basis, because I don't date older, or at least I never have. Like, I've gone out with older.
Mhm.
Most recently, she was very big into CrossFit. She was very attractive. She had 3 older children, 3 boys. She didn't want kids. However, there's other values there that didn't match up. Like her masculinity was just like very predominant, and unfortunately, the roles there in that dichotomy would not have worked for me long term. No
Sure.
matter how attractive, no matter how much we have in common on the surface, it was just very powerful masculinity coming from my date.
Yeah, and that's an I like the way you phrase that because this is something that I deal with it pretty frequently. And the upside is, going back to the whole like Instagram modeling joke, like I look very feminine, but my behavior and my mannerisms are very bro. Not clinical or technical, but I'm kind of in that. um I have a lot of female friends. I've never been one of those like anti-girls person, but I am a drink beer and watch football and kind of, if we just go stereotypical, like lots of swearing, lots of aggressive personality behaviors. And I have dated I haven't dated a lot. This is part of being in one very, very long relationship and only being out of it for like just over 2 years. So that's part of it. Um, but I have had a couple of guys who have stated like, I wish you were just a little bit softer. Um, and I've worked to be softer in ways for myself, but I think that I use the term differently than they mean it. They mean it as someone who is easier, like easier to manage, calmer, sweeter, more feminine. No, you don't think so? Well, how do
Uh,
you think they mean it?
no, I want you to finish your thought because I am just like so urgently wanting to talk with you
Okay.
through this.
It's okay. I think they want softer because they want someone that they can like control. And I think that sounds like a terrible way of phrasing it, but that is how I feel. Whereas for me, I've spent a lot of time being really closed off and hard in that term. So the softness that I've wanted to bring has been softness in terms of being more open and being more comfortable and being more confident in myself and eliminating that gap between the who I am right now in my house after a calm, quiet morning and who I am at work when I'm shouting at people to drop their fucking barbells to the ground because they're being fucking pansies. So I want that middle ground, and I want to live in that middle ground, and that's the softness I want as opposed to the more demure, sweetened softness that I frankly like. I can throw a dress on, I can look super great, but I'm probably still like my nickname has always been Sailor Jamie. Like there are certain aspects of a personality that I don't want to change, and they won't fit in a partnership with someone who is super tied up in that specific behavior.
Love it.
Now, yeah, sorry, Dave. Now you can talk. Sorry.
So let's take a look at this through the lens of the Enneagram a little bit.
Mhm.
The achiever is driven. The achiever loves their career. The achiever loves their success, whether that's in family or in painting a house or in simply just owning a house. And oftentimes, let's see, the Myers-Briggs is how you see the world. The Enneagram is how the world sees you.
Mhm.
And if people on the outside, whose opinions don't matter, Agreed?
Agreed.
If people from the outside are perceiving you as more masculine because you're driven, career oriented, successful in whatever it is that you do, you could be a croquet player and be successful as the achiever.
I just don't feel like anyone should ever be a croquet player, but yes, yeah, continue.
If
Yeah.
you were, you would be the best one
I
out
would
there.
be a very good croquet player. I mean, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. And that is a very three statement. If you're gonna do it, do it.
So going back to our previous part of the conversation where you said that society believes that we should be one way. And if the achiever is maybe ignited in a positive way to be different, to be their own self, opposing what society thinks that they should be, then that's perceived as masculine trait.
Mhm.
However, with the Enneagram, understanding this and knowing this about ourselves through self-awareness and personal discovery with any number of tools, but this one is the best that I've found, we can remove that mask of the achiever personality type and become more like the loyalist, which is where you go when you're growing and when you're in your best, most healthiest self.
Okay. I can take that. I don't so I still don't think I think it's allowed me to like see the differences in dating, but that doesn't change the situations that apply.
And the situation that we were talking about is the masculine appearance, or not physical appearance, but the the actions that are deemed as masculine. That's somebody else's opinion, which does not matter. However, if we are going to find success in your case in dating, we simply just need to have our preference be a more masculine man than you are in your own masculinity.
True.
And therefore, that more masculine man will bring out more femininity in you, whether you're dressed up for a night out or not.
All right. I mean, I see it completely. I agree with you completely, and I have nothing more to add. That's it. I mean, that's completely it. And I think also it's more just not even finding a more masculine man, but finding a man or a partner who is confident enough in themselves that that secondary scenario, whether it be, a persona that is more stereotypically masculine or more aggressive or abrasive or however we want to categorize that, someone who is confident and comfortable enough in themselves that it doesn't really matter, that they care about who you are. And that's the separation point. And that was I think that's one of the bigger things that I actively look for in a partner. Everyone looks for someone who is self-assured and confident and comfortable with who they are. And I think those are all important traits to have, unless you're like a narcissist who's like trying to find someone that you can just like project onto. And that's a different podcast.
We did that one with an achiever a couple weeks
Oh, that sounds like so not fun. So, I mean, unless it's that, obviously that's the case. Unless it's that you want someone who is, self-assured and confident and strong. But those are traits that once you get past those first initial days and times, you can see whether those are cracks in the facade or not. You see where they are. So, I think one of the better pieces of advice that I've gotten when it comes to dating that was really relevant for me. I have a lot of strong female friends, and then a lot of very emotionally aware male friends. So kind of both of those gender specific ends of the spectrum that are complementary, but usually not as rewarded for what they are. And my emotionally aware male friends are very verbal about my own self-worth and their own self-worth too. It's not just reflected onto me or the people they're talking about. And it's allowed me, after being in, I love my father very much, but all of my rewards and my accolades given as a child were based on what I produced, not who I was. So going back to that charmer thing, that feeds right into that.
And it is
And
so directly related to the achievers
mhm,
becoming solid in the personality type too.
yeah.
So, so things in our childhood, you said it earlier, solidify our personality type because we have all 9 Enneagram types within us.
Mhm.
This one just happened to be solidified because what you were rewarded for as a child.
Yeah, and I am just to like add on to that, and everything's different for everyone. I'm the eldest child, the eldest grandchild on both sides. And there are 11 grandchildren on my father's side. 10 of us are girls. So it's a lot of family, a lot of achievers, not within the Enneagram concept, but like as people. There are a lot of successful people. And actually a lot of probably that achiever style on the Enneagram as well. We have a lot of people who, have pursued careers in sports, pursued personality driven careers that are really focused. I'm cousins who are active in coaching, cousins who are active in, theater and media. So you have like that full gamut. But the way to stand out and the way that I fixed things when I was younger, because my parents would fight, it would be really bad, was to diffuse and deflect. So it's that, and that's therapy words right there. That's 7 years of therapy jumping right out on you. Diffuse and deflect. So it is all about creating a shitty that's going on. And as you get older, you realize, hey, that's a really great thing to do, but you're starting to do it in situations that are unhealthy that you need to approach and really directly manage, as opposed to just saying something funny to deflect off of the situation. It was definitely like there are two big things that I took from my divorce, in terms of personal growth thing from a relationship standpoint. And that was one of them. Like things would get really bad and I would just joke it off, and just actively try and joke it off so that I could, diffuse a situation. If something got bad, I'd make a really nice meal, or I would just something that had nothing to do with communication and solving a problem.
I'm damn proud of you.
Yeah, Well, the other one is still a work in progress. The other one is that when I'm mad or unhappy or hungry, as we've determined earlier, I just get really, really cold. I am not physically cold, like emotionally and psychologically cold. I just ice out. I get over it really fast. But as someone who has been iced out, both as a child and as an adult, it doesn't matter how fast the person who does the icing gets over it. It's the person who you've iced out whose time frame you need to be working from. So not only is that a behavior I've tried to work on improving, like not being a shitty bitch in general, but also respecting other people's timelines being different than my own. And I think if there's anything that I can recommend is, going back to what makes a relationship successful and having something that can help you grow. If you're not like, I had to sit down last September with my ex-husband and we walked through everything. Um, Parts of it were healthy, parts of it weren't. We split a bottle of our favorite beer and we sat on the couch and we sobbed hysterically while my poor roommate was in the other room. Like just that poor girl, like had to have overheard possibly the most emotionally dramatic conversation of her then 24-year-old life. Um, and we just hashed it all out. And one of the things that I asked him was, hey, if we could go back, we're not changing anything. Nothing's changing. What is something that you wish that I had done, or what is something that you want me to be able to take to the next relationship so I don't make the same mistakes twice? And his response wasn't super helpful, but it was still, it was still a conversation overall that was really valuable. And that's one of those questions where I think if I ever have another serious relationship end, which I hope it doesn't, but you never know. And sometimes that's part of life. I ever have another serious relationship end, I think that question is going to come with me. And I think it's something that even with friendships, if you have a really long-term friendship ending, I think it would be good to be able to have a calm, cool, and collected conversation, which everyone can't do. Or a like massive sob fest with a beer, but still emotionally like calm towards each other and ask, how can I be better? And how can I be not a better person, but a better version of myself? How can I bring the best version of myself to the table so that we all can be happy in the end?
What was his answer to that question, if you don't mind sharing?
So there's a lot of stuff. So there were some things that are like, it's his personal business, so I don't want to share a lot of it. But he was going through a lot of rough stuff when we split up. And he had said that he wasn't sure what was actually things that were happening versus what was him being paranoid. His one statement was that he wished that I gave him more of the illusion of choice. Like he didn't want to actually have choice and stuff. No, I know, it's funny. Yeah, he's like, well, he referenced his now wife, who was his then living girlfriend. He's like, well, you know, she makes it sound like she'll phrase it in a way where I can make a choice. And I was like, bro, she already made the fucking choice for you. But like, okay, if illusion of choice is the thing you fucking want, like, I'm not your girl, and I wish we had known this a while ago, but hey, we both had some great times, good growth, shook hands, good to go. So, like I said, it's helpful of answers. I believe when he said that, because he said her name and I looked at her, I was like, really, bro? Like I get it, but like maybe don't talk about your girlfriend right now while we're having this like huge emotional rehashing. Like leave that one on the other table.
Sure. I was only laughing. I was only laughing at your choice of words, the illusion of choice, because I've dated a 3 recently, and I like to cook, and she likes to cook 10 times more than I do. And if I'm invited over for dinner and she's still cooking, I'll always offer help, right? And we had the conversation of like, hey, I'm always going to ask you what I can do to help. Just give me something small, like juicing that lemon, or
Yeah.
or dicing that carrot, or chopping whatever. And humbly, she said, I think I can do that. Let go a little bit of that ownership.
Yeah.
And it was a good moment. It was like a really good conversation over something so important to her, important to me, but if you're outside looking in, that's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's seemingly trivial, but it's the small shit that matters, and it's the small shit that adds up.
Mm-hmm.
It is the, you know, the same person having to do the dishes every single day. It's, you know, being frustrated over the same towel or the same meal, or not asking for help. Or one of the issues that he and I had was, this is, you know, veering slightly out of Enneagram, but from a love language standpoint, I am textbook words of affirmation. Like, I just want you to tell me how wonderful I am. And I'm going to keep doing my thing, but I know you love me when you verbalize it, especially when you verbalize it in a way that's distinctly tied to something that's special about me or something special to me. I don't want to hear how good I look, but I want to hear that like my insights on this specific scenario that I've divulged to you were really insightful or important or valuable. Like, that's the stuff that matters to me. And he is acts of service. And so there was one day where he like changed something on my car. Like, it was something minor that like, I'm a car person in that I like I like nice cars. And that's the extent of it. And like my ex and I, like, he would buy cars and flip them. So I had a lot of experience with cars and stuff. So he had like fixed something that was like under the hood. I would never have seen it. It really, like, it might have turned a dash light off or something, but he never said anything. And then he got really mad that I never fed him the emotional response he wanted for this action that I never knew happened. And if I have no idea, and so one of the things that I told him after that was like the baby step scenario of like, if you do something and you want recognition for it, I need to know. And I'll try not to be, I won't dismiss it if you say that, but I'll try not to be, I'll try to be more aware of this stuff, but I'm never going to notice if you like change a head gasket on my car. Like it wasn't that, but like I'm never going to notice if you like put my snow tires on my car. I'm not that person. I'm big picture and easily distracted. I'm got idiot squirrel brain. Like I'm not going to see snow tires, bro. You got to tell me. So I think that another thing that was really valuable for me to learn was, you know, like I actually, every person I've dated since my divorce, which is a small group of people, but they've all been important in their own way. One of the early questions I ask is, what is your love language? Do you know your love language? And if you don't know your love language, can you figure it out and tell me?
So that was probably the best story I've heard on the podcast so far, tying things together. And the reason why is because you just perfectly described my own personal philosophy of combining the Enneagram with love languages to help us find a healthy partnership. And you're not far off by being words of affirmation and an Enneagram type 3.
Yeah.
Because what do we want as a 3? We want to feel worthy. And what does words of affirmation do for us?
Yeah, it's I want to feel validated for who I am, not for what I do. And the words of affirmation that matter to me are the ones that validate who I am and not what I do or what I look like. And frankly, sometimes those kind of fall in the same boat.
If your next partner, your future partner, who is more masculine than you, I'm sorry, more confident, excuse me, I'll rephrase, is confident enough to handle Sailor Jamie.
There we go.
So if your next partner comes to you and he says, one of the things I respect most about you is how passionate you are for fill in the blank. Mm-hmm. What does that do to you as an Enneagram type 3 and words of affirmation love language?
So it would depend on what that blank is. So if it was, you know, how passionate you are about your like health or appearance, I think that I would immediately dismiss. What the thing, my biggest passion is, and it's something that I was able to like find and tap into when I worked at the Fight League. I love helping people do what they're most passionate about when they're at their most vulnerable. And that is, you know, I've allowed that to translate into a lot of aspects of my life. Marketing is not one of them, if we're being perfectly honest. Marketing is selling people dumb shit that they don't need. But please keep paying me money. Like, keep giving me money to do marketing, but marketing is just dumb shit people don't need. But it's fitness, and actually it is partially like how I present myself on Instagram is all of that stuff. It's that comfort in becoming who you are and the hurdles and pitfalls along the way to get there. And it's the time in the gym of people who show up, who I was telling my parents about this today. On Tuesday, I had a girl who's probably about 13-ish come in, and it was back squat day, and she was there with her dad, and she'd never done a back squat before. And I was able to walk, and vulnerability comes in a bunch of different forms, but at the end of the day, vulnerability is being able to be aware that you don't know something and you need help to do something. Do it or be it or become it or change it. And so she was completely open to feedback. It was great. And it was one of those things that absolutely validated the time that I was spending there. And then the next day, one of the owners sent me a text message that was a screenshot of something that the girl's father had sent him, just saying, you know, Jamie was super helpful. It was really nice. That is a core example of something that lights up fires all of my cylinders when it comes to both like Enneagram value sets and my words of affirmation love languages.
One of the things I like about you most, Jamie, is that you can get people to show up vulnerably to be their best selves.
No. That is, thank you. So, and I'm also not good at taking compliments, which is stupid. Thank you. That is always my hope. That's what matters to me as a person.
Mm-hmm. And if somebody resonated with your message today, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Oh God. Listen, like, go to Instagram. It's at Denim Debutante. Dave will put the actual spelling of that. I chose that because I was an English major and I didn't think through that nobody can spell the word debutante ever.
Or even denim.
Or denim, actually. Frankly, that's completely true. I used to have a denim blog. I still have, truly, I have like 300 pairs of jeans in Tupperware bins in my garage right now. But yeah, so Denim Debutante on Instagram. If you can get past the tits and ass, there's something there. And this is also one of those really true lessons in life, that if you look past an appearance-based scenario, that sometimes you can be really pleasantly surprised. Sometimes you won't. And sometimes it is just tits and ass. And you need to be confident with that too. But occasionally you can get through to stuff and understand the vulnerable, true human underneath the scenario. So yeah, Instagram. That was a really long way to just say Instagram.
I'll put the link in the show notes below, guys. But if there's one thing that you want to leave us with that maybe we touched on briefly or we didn't get to yet, what would that be? And hang on, because I only asked that question because you already answered it, and I'm just going to clip it and move it.
Perfect.
So thank you so very much, Jamie. This was by far the most fun I've had recording a podcast episode. And I just really want to say I appreciate you, and you're showing up in an amazing way in your area of Michigan. And next time you come to Denver, don't escape our town without getting together with me on a patio for a beer.
Okay. And it will probably be at some point next summer, unless my ex-husband knocks up his wife sooner rather than later, and I can come get dogs. I know. I'm ending it on a strong note, Dave. That's it. We just want to end this on a strong note. Get it right.
All right, we're praying for a condom to break so that Jamie can come back to Denver.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this. This was super fun. And hopefully I have not completely scared or offended any of your listeners. Or hopefully I have. I actually don't care.
We've taught them over the past 18 months to become very resilient and very compassionate for other people's opinions.
Oh, good.
So thanks again, Jamie. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.